Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Well, welcome. I am excited for today's episode. We have Matt Lavinder from New Again Houses here with us. He's going to talk about one of the most popular segments in franchising, which is real estate. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you with us. Gosh, we got so much to talk about. So let's kick things off a little bit briefly. Why don't you share with the audience exactly what is New Again Houses?
So we in a nutshell, we flip houses. And so we really add value to real estate with construction. And so that's where our focus is. We acquire single family houses for the most part and add value to them with construction, and then typically sell them or rent them.
Wow. So look, it sounds like to me you started the business when? Like in the 2007, 2008 time period?
Yeah, right there when everybody wants to get into real estate, right? 2007.
No. Why don't we go back to that for a little bit here? Because look, economically there are cycles, right? We have good times and bad times. So let's talk a little bit about the humble beginnings. So you start in 2007, 2008, worst possible time, and before you franchise. Let's talk about that journey. What was that like?
Yeah, it was interesting times, and so. In this business, you have to purchase properties, you have to do the construction, and then you have to sell them. And there's always a most difficult part to that. There's probably always the most difficult part to any business, depending on the season and the economy. And so in 2007, it was easy to buy houses. Like you could walk down the street and buy houses, and it was easier to find people to work on them because there were a lot of hungry contractors in 2007 and 8. Much more difficult to sell them. And so now you fast forward to 2023, it's much more difficult to buy and easier to sell. And so there's always a most difficult part. But I think starting a business, like when there are headwinds, teaches you some really valuable lessons that you don't learn in the easier times. And so we really learn to be disciplined and frugal and really calculate risk. And I think that experience has really, really helped us prosper during all the different economic cycles. I don't fully trust any financial advisor that wasn't working in 2007.
Great point.
There are lessons that you just can't learn unless you've been through that.
Right. You think back to 2007, 2008, where you had those headwinds. You learn to deal with crisis. I love this quote. Winston Churchill once said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." And he said this while forming the United Nations after World War II. And you did just that. Not only did you get through that, but more importantly, you were able to battle your way. And I understand you started franchising in 2015, which was which was a different cycle than what we saw after you really launched your first franchise in 2019 during the quote unquote heyday of real estate.
Yeah, the past 15 years, you've seen a lot of changes, a lot of different seasons. I think there's also there are things that haven't changed. I think this is true for any business. Like you can set a business up to succeed in a particular economic climate or a particular season. I think it's much more important to figure out how to set up a business for success through all of those different cycles. And so, as much as things have changed, the one thing that hasn't changed is you have to add value to the property. And so there have been times in the last 2 or 3 years, especially, where you could buy a house, not really add any value to it, and still succeed. Those days don't last. And so what we've learned is how important it is to add real value to the property. And it doesn't matter whether it's 2008 or 2023, there's the housing stock in this country is very old. It's getting older every year. And the way you add real value in any cycle is to add construction value to the properties. And so that's kind of stayed at the heart of our business model.
So kind of give me a typical flip. Give me maybe an idea of what are some of the most common changes that you guys are making, that franchisees are making to the beautification of these homes that flip.
Yeah, so the typical house that we purchase is directly from someone who's inherited a house. And so they're going to be in their 50s, and they've inherited a house that hasn't been updated in a generation. There's deferred maintenance, there's just cosmetic updates, but everything in that house really needs to be touched. And so our average construction budget is north of $80,000. So these are not carpet and paint flips. We start with the systems, the important stuff that people don't necessarily see, with the electric, the plumbing, the HVACs, and then we're just really disciplined on the cosmetic piece of it. So almost every surface is getting touched in these remodels.
So what led you to your franchise journey? So you're flipping homes, you're doing great, and then you decide franchising. Why was franchising the right move for you guys?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that flip houses because they really have a passion for the houses themselves. Like, it's an art form to them. That wasn't the case for me because I don't have any skills. Like, I'm useless. I'm useless with tools. And so it was never,
Absolutely.
So it was never, it was never about that. It was never about that for me. For me, my enthusiasm has been about building a business around this particular business. And so we say that our franchise owners don't flip houses. We build businesses that flip houses. And that's a big difference. And I think people that start a business there's almost a fork in the road at some point as to whether you're going to do that business or you are going to build a business that does that. And people, it's easier just to do the business, right? Like, that's the easiest way, but you hit a ceiling and you never really have a quality of life going that route. And so for me, my passion has always been about how can we turn flipping houses into a real sustainable business? Because in 2008, it was almost entirely mom and pop industry. Like, people would use their equity lines and go out on the weekends and flip a couple houses a year. And so it was really a hobby, mom and pop kind of business. And my vision was, how can we make this more sophisticated? Like, how can we bring systems into it and technology and really systematize it so that we can scale it? So we're not just doing a couple a year, but we're doing a lot of houses so that we can create competitive advantages. And so that's where my interests and energy have been, is trying to create those competitive advantages.
That's brilliant, because you really are able to attract the franchise owner that sees it for the business of what it is versus them swinging a hammer.
Yeah. And we've got some contractors are attracted to this, and they obviously bring certain competitive advantages, like they understand, but it's also difficult to get them out of the business. And so we do a lot of coaching in our franchise system. Like, franchises really are, it's a form of coaching. And so our coaching with people that actually have skills is a lot to get them out of the doing and into the building of the business.
All right. Working on the business, not in the business. Right. Yeah. And you guys have exploded though. If I understand this right, so you guys have awarded 46 franchises since 2019.
Oh, I said, yeah, we're adding 1 to 2 a month right now. So it's really accelerated in the past year or two.
How many states is that in?
Ooh, we are somewhere between 20 and 25. Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
more popular in certain regions of the country than others?
Well, we're headquartered in East Tennessee, and so Tennessee and the Nashville area was the first to grow. So it's kind of grown out from there, but we're doing a lot in Texas. We're doing a lot in Boston, Philadelphia. The Northeast has been really a really good area for us. Yeah, but with technology the way it is, and Google Street View, and geography really isn't, it's really not a hindrance. So makes it, that's made it very scalable.
I would imagine one of the challenges you have is to finding a franchise owner that understands that they are not the person doing the work. Yes, you are attracting contractors, which is fine. But ultimately, you're looking for somebody like myself that's not handy, that can really see the value for the business, which I can see that. In fact, I would have been somebody to be intimidated. I would be intimidated by a business like this initially, because I would think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be doing the work. But my job, I assume, as the franchisee is I'm orchestrating the contractors, right?
Yeah, it's our indicators for success are things like being able to form relationships, because the product is about houses, but almost every business is really about relationships. And in this business, it happens to be relationships with contractors and real estate agents and various different people, but it's really based on relationships, and people that are good at that have an advantage. It's also, I think, project management skills and the ability to keep more than one ball up at a time. But I think that's true for any business, because you just have to do that. Like, I think I find people that get focused on one area and then neglect another one, and it's like whack-a-mole. And that project management skills, being able to keep more than one ball up at a time, is really valuable.
What's been your biggest surprise since franchising?
Oh man, I think it's how difficult it is to do it well. I said earlier, it's really about teaching. And everyone learns differently. Every franchise owner brings I think we have 46 right now. It's 46 different human beings from 46 different careers, and they've been successful in 46 different things. The strengths and weaknesses come together. And so our job is to empower them through coaching and support. And that's a really hard job. Like it never ends. So we're always trying to figure out how to teach and coach better, because while since we don't cater to necessarily contractors, I mean, flipping a house there's a lot of technical skills there, and so we have to be able to teach people to execute that don't have those skills.
Sure. And what about the very beginning? Analyzing properties. So you've got this proprietary system, right? This master suite technology.
Yep.
Tell me what that does.
Yeah, it's a really important part of what we do, and this is software that we've been developing from the very beginning. So when I first started flipping houses, I'm just very systems and process driven. And so anything I do, I build systems and processes around it. And so we did that for our local organization and our local operation. And we were flipping, we were flipping 30 some houses a year here locally. And these are big flips. And so we built these systems around that and started building software around that, and it got so sophisticated that that's really what encouraged us to build the franchise system, because we'd almost overbuilt for our local operation. And so we think of it as the brain, And if you are teaching a system, it needs to be in a central place. Like, it needs to have a central operating system. Otherwise, everything gets siloed, and you can't. It makes it difficult to teach. And so the software helps with lead generation. It does the analysis. It manages the construction. It manages the business. It also acts as an underwriting platform for our capital providers, because a big part of what we've done is provide access to the capital to scale this business. And so our capital providers trust our analysis software so that it serves as an underwriting platform as well.
Wow. I think there are so many folks out there that as an audience of folks that are looking to buy a franchise, you get sucked into maybe, a sexy brand or a concept, and you don't know enough about it, but you like the idea of it. This is more than just that. I hope the audience is really hearing you loud and clear, because I keep hearing systems and processes, because ultimately I want to invest in a franchise where I know that founder has taken the technology, taken the importance of training, taken the importance of systems and processes to make a business, not just to, slap lipstick on a pig and say, hey, this is a great business. This is real estate. And, we fight through all these economic cycles, and that's not what this is at all. You have really systematized every part of this business.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to kind of shortcut when you build a franchise. And I think the most common way is to be really good at marketing and branding, and neglect the hard stuff, which is the software and the processes and the coaching. And I joke sometimes it's a lot easier to do it'd be a lot easier just to do the branding and marketing and not have to worry about that.
Of course. But that's the beauty of what you've done. And the other thing is that, Matt, the coaching part of the business. I don't know about you. I'd love to hear about New Again Houses. For my business, most of my franchisees were first-time business owners. And I didn't know that when I started out. I did not expect that. I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not just training them, not teaching them how to run like a sports league. I was teaching them how to run the business of running a sports league. And in your case, what would you say the percentage of first-time business owners?
Yeah, my wife and I actually bought a big sports facility a few years ago, and so we've had to learn the things that your franchise. So sometime I'd love to pick your brain on how you coach through that. But yeah, when you asked what was most surprising, and I said teaching, that's part of it, is what we had to teach. And so I think we as franchisors, like every franchisor is probably a raging entrepreneur that has business experience. And I think we often project that onto everyone else. And it's surprising, you can't do that, because most people don't have that business experience. And so things that I never thought we would have to coach, we are coaching. And so it's really, you think of, when I first started, I thought, all right, we're trying to provide structure to flipping a house. So guardrails and processes, and just making it structured so it can be replicated over and over again. But what we found is that we had to do the same for building a business. And so we had to provide structure for building a business. So that's like an accounting system, a chart of accounts, but then also like how many hours a week and when in your week do you need to allocate to accounting so it doesn't get left out? Like how much to marketing? And so it keeps coming back to like building structures for people. And so, yeah, the business part is a lot of that.
How big is your corporate team?
We have 12. And so 2 of those are dedicated business coaches. And so they meet individually with every franchise owner at least twice a month. And it's just about the business side and helping them grow the business beyond themselves. And then we have construction coaches who are there to support the technical part of every project and kind of review before anyone acquires a property. Our construction coaches look at it. We have a lot of eyes on that deal.
That's awesome. And as a franchise owner, I understand that I could do this part-time, right? I don't need to do this as my full-time career.
Correct.
How many franchisees are part-time versus full-time?
It is probably about half and half. I think people, when they do it part-time, they have to adjust their expectations in terms of how quickly it can grow. Because when you look at your full-time people are going to grow the business faster. It's not only time, but it's like they're hungrier. They've burned the ships.
Well, you have figured out something that many franchisors haven't. A lot of franchise systems can't get part-time to work, but I think you've got. Partially, it's maybe the nature of the beast, right? And the other part of it is that the systems and process you have in place. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's probably a reflection of my own experience too, because it's when I started part time out of necessity, because this business takes a while to get paydays. So it's not like you open the franchising and you have receipts coming in the next day. Flipping a house is a process, and you get paid at the end. So it's hard for people to transition to full time right off the bat, and it was for me. And so I remember how hard that was, but also how important it was. Like, I really wanted to do this full time, and so but to get there, I had to do both until I got it established. And so when I built the franchise, I really had that person in mind. And so we built it in a way that you could do it part-time.
I would imagine the part-time franchisees get inspired when they see what the full-time folks are doing.
Yeah, they do. And it's inspiring for us to see somebody be able to quit a job that they never wanted to do in the first place.
Wow.
My parents were entrepreneurs, but my dad in particular also worked at a factory. And so he did the entrepreneurial stuff on the side. And I remember how much he wanted to not have that factory job and be just do what he loved. And it's hard. Like, it's really hard when you've got the security of a job, and he never attain that. And so for me, seeing people be able to do something where they can kind of spread their wings, have success financially, but also have a quality of life is really rewarding. And it's just never been about the houses. Like, the houses have always been a means to something else.
Well, you being so system and process oriented, and you started this flipping houses part-time. What did you do before this? What's your background?
I took a wandering path. I really fell in love with teaching and coaching. And so when I finished graduate school, I taught in college. I taught history, and I coached men's soccer at King University for 12 years. And so I still love coaching. Like, when you're a coach or a teacher, you don't stop being that. And so I really like it's a part of me. But franchising is it's just such a natural extension of that, because ultimately it's coaching.
Right. And it's so rewarding when you see somebody starting out where they knew nothing about the business, and you can see them turn the corner and become quote unquote successful. They're doing that. They're surviving off of this business, and maybe they even have employees of their own, and now they are responsible for other people, but it's just a chain reaction. It's just an incredibly rewarding feeling, right? When you see that light bulb go on and somebody starts to turn the corner.
Yeah, like there's nothing like it. Like it's so rewarding, and I think that's why I'll always it's one of the many reasons that I love the franchising model. And it's also like franchising is it's just a unique model, and our first core value is ownership. And um, franchising is about ownership. So when they are successful, like they own, like it's theirs, right? Like they own that success, and you don't get that. You don't get that everywhere in life. Like it's pretty cool. And franchising is unique that way. You can work for successful companies and share that success. You can be a flaming entrepreneur and take all the risk yourself and figure it out your own way. But franchising is like this hybrid thing where you can own your success but not be alone.
Yeah, yeah. And that's so helpful for so many people that they want to be, have that business, but they feel like they can't start something or don't want to start something from scratch. Somebody like you,
Yeah.
I think if I had known you before you did this, knew the kind of person that you are, think about it, your skill set. You come from coaching, and you really relish systems and processes. Like you were made to be a franchisor. Truthfully, you really were. Coaching, values coaching, and love systems and processes. Like you are the ideal founder. You really are. Not just a crazy visionary founder without pride. Like you've got the total package. That's awesome.
Well, it's not what I dreamed about being when I grew up. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be I wanted to be a pro athlete, but it does and fit. But it's cool to see. You see that in the franchise system too. Like people have certain gifts that they were never able to really maximize or leverage in a previous job or career, and they know it. Like they feel like they were never able in that career. They were always held back, and my visualization of it is like you're living in a box that's too small for you, and then to find something where you can spread your wings and really assert your gifts. And I think business and being a franchise owner does that because we flip houses, you flip sports leagues. Like it's not so much the product as it is the opportunity to lead and to build, and whatever gifts you have an opportunity to come express themselves,
Absolutely. So whether it's houses or whether it's sports, I always say this, it's just a vehicle that we use. Because at the end of the day, it's a people business. You're teaching, management, marketing, operations, finance, accounting, technology. Those are the things we do. But we find a industry where we found a segment to be able to deliver that. You're delivering a flipping of houses. And it's something that's obviously proven itself in all different economical cycles works.
A common theme of this conversation has been the people. Like it's about the people. It's not about the houses or the sports leagues. It's about the people and the relationships. I do think it's important. Like the product is important in that it determines the quality of people that you can have relationships with. And if you choose the wrong product, it's very difficult to surround yourself with the right people. And so there's a lot of really good franchise offerings out there, but I think the product does matter in that regard, and it does matter in terms of the quality of life that product affords.
Well, there's 4,000 plus franchisors out there with their brand.
Yeah.
It's incredible, but yet 84% of them never get to 100 franchise units. And you're like halfway there, and you just started in 2019. So I know it won't be long before you pass that magical number. How big is big for you? Tell me about your vision.
The more I learn about franchising, the more I think the metric should be about quality than quantity. And when I look at other franchise systems, you go to a franchise conference and everyone defines themselves by the number of franchises they have. And I think I think that might be the wrong metric, because you can grow a franchise system really fast. Like, you can have really good marketing, tell a great story, and grow a franchise really quickly. And you see franchise systems like that, but they're attracting the wrong people. They're not successful. And it seems to me like success with a franchise is quality more than quantity. Is you do better with a few higher producing franchise owners than you do a lot of non-producing.
All right. And you get the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the success from 20% of the people. I mean, your top 20 people, or top 20% are going to be producing the most results.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, we feel a lot of responsibility for anybody that comes in. And like, we really put a lot of effort into the other 80%, not just the top 20%. So it's a constant, that's like going back to what I said before, like the effort that it goes into teaching everyone, because you got 46, like, some of them are fast starters, some of them were able to start as full-time, some of them weren't. Like, they all require different kinds of coaching. And that's something that we've really learned over the past few years. And then it's in how do you effectively coach, and then how do you measure that? Like, how do you measure whether you've been effective or not? And I think back to when I was coaching, one of the things that I miss the most about coaching is you got instant feedback, right? Like, you played a game, there was a score. You knew if you won, great. If you lost, you went back and you watched film and you practiced all week and you tried to fix it and win the next week. Well, business isn't like that. Like, it's not that cut and dry. Like, the feedback is always like never clear. And so that's what we've been spending a lot of resources here in the past couple of years trying to do a better job of keeping score and knowing when we're winning or when we're losing. But that's not easy. Like, that's a lot easier said than done.
Totally. Well, let's talk about score for a minute, because at least there is some score to talk about outside of the business. I understand you were awarded, you've got some accolades from the Franchise Business Review. Why don't we talk about that?
Yeah. That's an example. Like, that was really validating, because you're in this and you're like trying to make incremental progress every day, and it's hard to know. And so Franchise Business Review was an opportunity where they go in and actually they go in and survey all of your franchises directly. And so they get unfiltered information, and they ask them questions directly on support and their financial success and culture and technology and all these things. And so we've done that the past couple of years. And I remember 3 years ago, I went to a conference and I went up to them and said, how do I do this? Like, how do we? And they said, you're not big enough. We can't even really talk to you. And so then the next year we were big enough and we scored really well. And then this past year we finished in the top 25 of all franchises. And so that was really validating, and just for our whole team.
That is great. Other than that, though, you're not keeping score of wins and losses, though, are you?
We'll keep track of that one.
That's great. So what are some of the misconceptions, though, going back to your actual franchise offering? Do I need a real estate license? What are some of the common misconceptions that people have about the franchise itself?
I think I think people assume they need construction expertise, which isn't the case. It can almost be a liability, because you're tempted to be pulled into the business and get in the way of your contractor team. Because what we're really trying to do is build a construction ecosystem that takes on a life of its own and grows and is able to solve problems 10 years from now that it wasn't able to solve now. And so we're growing this construction ecosystem, and it's hard to do that if you're in the middle, kind of getting in the way. And so people assume that having those skills is an asset when sometimes it can really be a liability. But then I think that our offering is unique because sometimes people have an inflated expectation, and a lot of franchise systems, it's like the challenge is convincing people that you can make money in this with this product, right? Like if you got a commercial cleaning franchise, like can you really make money cleaning office space? Whereas with flipping houses, like people have been watching HGTV for a long time, and I don't want to be a spoiler, but they don't always tell the truth on this. it's more fiction than fact, and so people have this expectation that they can do this in a 30-minute show and press the easy button there at the end before the credits roll and get this big payday, and it's not that simple. So a lot of what we do is like tamper expectations and say like this is a business. Like you have to do the grind that you would do in any business. You just don't have to do nearly as many transactions. And so, but you still have to do the marketing. You still have to do the accounting.
Wow.
Things,
Matt, that's great that you really set the expectations because people come in so excited. You're not trying to take them, you don't want to take them off of this, mountaintop of excitement, but at the same time, you do want to kind of set the parameters of what they should expect. There's always going to be a honeymoon period in franchising, but then there's also going to be the grind. I don't care what franchise you're in, any business you're in, even if you don't buy a franchise, you are going to be in the grind. The difference between doing on your own and being in a franchise is that you get to see this as a coach and you get to help navigate and pull them through the grind. But setting the expectations ahead of time and saying, look, it's not always going to be easy, but the pitfalls before they happen, right?
Yeah, it's no different than any other relationship. I mean, a franchise agreement is 10 years. And so we see it as a 10-year marriage, and we fully expect it to go beyond 10 years. But 10 years is a long time. Like it is not a transactional relationship. Like it's just not. And so if your expectations are not aligned, like you set the relationship up for failure. And the worst thing to do in franchising is have franchises that aren't successful because we have to disclose we disclose all that. There's no hiding that. And so if you want to be successful as a franchise, your franchise owners have to be successful, and expectations are really important. And so I think when people are looking for a franchise, like I think it's important to make sure that the franchise salespeople are aligned with the franchise operational people. Like you don't need to just talk to a franchise salesperson because their interests may not be aligned with everyone else's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And do folks come to like a discovery day to your offices towards the end of the process? How does that work with you guys?
So we've got surprisingly enough, we have a pretty sophisticated process for our we call it our path to ownership.
Okay.
It is all virtual, and so we don't have a discovery day because discovery days can often be too pressure packed, and people end up drinking from a fire hose. And so our process is about 5 weeks. It is it's a journey, and so every week they get new information and they talk to someone different here at our home office. So they'll talk to me in the first week, Sam in the second week, someone else in the third week, someone else in the fourth week. So they get different perspectives, and they're not drinking from a fire hose and not feel like this pressure of a clock ticking while they're here in person.
That's great. I really feel like, Matt, that you are really setting these people up for success. And I commend you for recognizing the importance that folks have to really buy into the culture, because that's ultimately what you're really selling them is the culture of your business.
Yeah. Yeah, we're selling a culture, but we're also like when you're an emerging franchise like us, you're also building a culture, right? Like I mean, every person that comes in is going to contribute to New Again House's culture. Like they just are. Like it's a really tight. We come together every Thursday and we have a round table where we share ideas. It's a really close system, and so everyone brings something. And it's just like a college soccer team. Like you bring the wrong person, it can really wreck. It can really wreck the team. So yeah, culture's super important, especially when you're a young system like ours.
Yeah, the toughest part, I think, for a franchisor or a young franchisor is making sure that the culture is right. And more importantly, with that first dozen or so franchise owners, it sets the tone. And if we bring on the right people, it just obviously it multiplies from there because they get it. And those folks talk to those existing franchise owners. If we just start quote unquote selling franchises to anybody that wants it, it really sets you off on the wrong foot. And it's the reason why so many franchisors fail.
Yeah, and experienced franchisors tell new franchisors that over and over. Like it's true. Like you can't go back and redo it. You only get one chance to get your first set of franchise owners, and they really do have an enormous impact on the culture. So yeah, the problem is when you're doing that, you're doing it for your first time. So you're doing the most important you're doing the most important thing at a time where you're least prepared to make those decisions, right? So it's tough.
Yes. And for me, I was the one in franchise development when I started my company. So I'm trying to keep the lights on, right? I'm looking around saying, okay, we don't just think about it. You have 0 franchise owners, and the only way you're going to succeed is by selling franchises so that eventually you build that critical mass of franchisees that you'll get royalties and you build this culture, build this organization. But at the end of the day, when you're starting, you need to sell franchises. And the hardest thing is to tell a potential franchisee, I don't think you're a good fit, especially when you're trying to keep lights on. But if you think in terms of franchise profitability first and foremost, and truthfully, if the person's really a right enough fit for your brand, that has to be the most important thing. But I'll be honest with you, totally honest here. I didn't know what I didn't know when I started out. So I didn't know what made a potential good franchisee. And so if somebody communicated well, they were well organized, they said they were detail oriented, I let them in the system. I didn't know. And especially if they liked or knew something about sports, they were in. And of course, as it turns out, if they knew something about sports, that ended up being more difficult because we were focusing on the wrong things. And I think probably the same thing can potentially happen in real estate. Like you mentioned earlier, having a contractor come in, that's great, but they really have to be open-minded to understanding the business of what you're trying to do.
Yeah. What do you point to as after all the different franchisees you've seen come through, what is your indicator of success?
Of success? Wow, that's a great question. I would say that it's hard to see hunger in a person all the time, but I think the number one trait I have found, if I look back on, again, I'm kind of playing, Monday morning quarterback here, but somebody that was hungry is the number one trait I needed to be successful. Again, this is not foolproof, but sometimes when you have if I had mom or dad or grandma or grandpa buy the franchise for you and you weren't hungry, I had more failures than success with those people. But if I had somebody come in, and not that they were down to the last $50,000, but if I had somebody that came in and say, look, I get this, I love this, I'm going to figure this out, like I'm going to succeed, and you can just see the eye of the tiger, in them. But I will tell you this also, aside from that hunger, what really, really helped us is using an assessment tool. We used a tool called Predictive Index. It's like a disc. And What I
Okay.
liked about predictive index is that it didn't necessarily tell me whether they were going to be successful, but it did tell me though if they were not going to be a right fit, because it measured different things
Mm.
like how autonomous they were, how extroverted, introverted they were, how impatient, patient, how well they would
Mm.
follow the details, how formal and informal. So if I had somebody that was not detail oriented, at least the assessment tool came back that they're not detail oriented at all, and they're
Mm.
extremely, well, usually if they're not detailed, they're probably very extroverted. But if they were extremely
Mm-hmm.
extroverted and they weren't detail oriented, so they can speak well and they can sell, but they can't follow systems and processes, they were probably not a right fit. So I found that
Yeah.
using an assessment tool like predictive index really helped me a lot with sharing with candidates why I thought that they might be a good fit or why I think, maybe we're not a right fit for them.
Yeah, I think that would help filter out the outliers who you just can't make successful. But then it would also help. It also helps coach. It coaches the other ones. Like it helps you know what they need coaching in and support.
Absolutely. And then once you've built the base of folks that have taken an assessment tool, you could start to have like a profile of here's my most successful franchise owners that have
Yeah.
a not a personality, but have traits that look like this, right? Because we want people to
Yeah.
be successful. And again, it wasn't foolproof, but it was just an added tool in addition to talking with them, setting expectations, like you're saying, seeing if they're really kind of coachable folks. It was one piece of the puzzle, but I got to tell you, it made a very big difference to at least share with people who I didn't think were a right fit, but it definitely did not like guarantee success. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
set that
Mm-hmm.
expectation that
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
personality trait tool does that, because a lot goes on in people's lives. You don't know where they are
Yeah.
at that stage of their time.
Yeah. Humans are complicated.
Yeah, we're complicated people and we're different stages of our lives, right? And sometimes a
Mm-hmm.
franchise potential candidate you're talking to, it might be a great partnership for them, but maybe not right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And having that, I think having that self-aware, have the evaluation helps with self-awareness. But I also think like a franchise system requires self-awareness too, because you go back to when we start a franchise, like we think we can coach anybody, right, to be successful.
Absolutely.
Like,
I'm going to make everybody. I know how to run sports programs. I know how to run this business. I can make anybody successful. And then the franchise gods come down and say, oh, yeah, watch this.
that's it. That's
It's
it.
true, but it
So,
humbles you, right? What,
yeah. Yeah.
what advice would
Yeah.
you give to people who are considering joining New Again houses?
Man, I think it to that point, like self-awareness, like what are you, what are you, what do you want? How hungry are you really? Like, how bad do you want it? Um, if you're going to go into business, you need to be able to persevere through adversity. Like, if you don't have that in you, like you should stay with your W-2. Like this, you shouldn't go down the franchising route. It doesn't matter what franchise it is. The other thing is, I do think the product matters, and you do need to find a product that fits your personality. And so, like we are unique because it's more of a low volume, high margin business, whereas most franchise businesses are high volume businesses. And so there's challenges with either.
Why don't you tell the folks that are out there thinking, okay, this was a great idea a few years ago, but now with interest rates that are higher, home prices haven't really come down. Why is this still a great opportunity for them?
Yeah, I don't like I've been through all the cycles now, and it's you just have you, you if you're able to add value to a property, there is a path to success. There is a viable business in any market cycle, because like our housing stock in this country is we stopped building affordable houses in the 70s. Like the houses we're remodeling were built in the 50s and 60s for the most part, because we stopped building them, and so they just get older every year. And so there's this, our housing stock as a country is old, and it needs this enormous amount of upgrading, and there's not enough people that can do that. And so there's opportunity there in any market. In any market, you just have to be willing to, you have to be willing to build a business that can add that value. And that's not taking shortcuts. It's doing it sometimes the hard way, but the hard way perseveres through all of the market cycles. And it's just the strategy adjusts depending on the market cycle. Like, you might hold houses for rentals more now, or flip them more yesterday. You change your strategy. But if you can add value to something as important as housing, like, there's a business there.
I think that's great. Adding value and knowing that I have a few different strategies. I just don't have to flip. I could buy, hold, do long-term rental, might even do short-term rental based on where the market is. Absolutely.
Yeah. Opportunity there depending on the territory. And so that's where you get into the strategy of it. But at the core of it, you do have to add value to that property.
Absolutely agree. All right. So I'd like to finish up by asking you this. Franchising, I have found in 20 years, the franchise community is so giving and so generous of information. Mm-hmm. And I've always said that anytime I go to these franchise conventions or conferences, you could be next to a competitor and they're just so willing to share information, right? What would you say? There's an aspiring entrepreneur out there that's watching, listening to this, that's thinking of franchising their concept. What advice would you give to the new franchisor that wants to be part of this franchise journey?
I would say think really deeply about what your why for that. Because if you think it's as easy as just pushing a button and on a spreadsheet and multiplying your success by 100, that is not what this is. This is a completely new business and I say franchising is like a new problem every day that you have never seen before, and none of your friends have ever seen it either. And the reward for solving that problem is a new problem tomorrow that you've never seen before.
Well, that's great. Let's end on an encouraging note. Like, hey guys, there'll be a new problem you've never seen before. Sure, why not? No, Matt, you've been great. I've really enjoyed this past 45, 50 minutes we've had time together here, because you are unique for sure. I don't think I don't run into a founder every day that really, really values the importance of coaching, the systems and processes, the people, and understanding that your product is about providing value, right? That's the end of the day. It's about how can I provide more value than anybody else. So thank you. I appreciate your time. And
it's been great.
Thank you. One last thing here. So if there was somebody interested in learning more about New Again Houses, how can they learn more about you guys? Yeah,
just newagainhouses.com. And there's a franchising link there, and we'd love to talk to you.
Awesome. Matt, thanks so much for being with me today.
Okay. All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.